calling the meeting to order. We've got introductions of members and public attending the event. This would be Eleanor, so we'll have to do that.
Hi, I'm Eleanor Levin. I'm here on behalf of the South District Neighborhood Association.
Do you need introductions?
Do you wanna?
Sure. Yeah, that'd be good.
Okay.
I know a few people up there.
Julie Seidel Johnson, Director of Parks and Recreation.
Dominic Donjoli, community or member at large, I
I
think.
think so.
Whatever's not the design arts professional.
Yes, so my name is Andrea Truitt. I am also the at-large, not design professional category.
Eddie Boykin, design professional and member since 2019.
Scott Silvers, I'm the Assistant City Engineer for the City of Iowa City.
And I'm Wendy Ford, Public Art Coordinator and Economic Development Coordinator. Okay.
All the coordinating.
So many hats.
You wouldn't know it today, though, would you?
All right, do we have public discussion of any item not on the agenda? All right, here comes Steve.
Sorry, I'm like. Oh, I didn't grab a thing.
Are you looking for an agenda? I don't have an extra one,
Oh.
but if you could share Eddie's cover sheet, that would be great. I'm trying to cut down on photocopies.
All right, did we
Steve,
already
okay.
call it to order? Or
We did consideration of the minutes.
you already approved them?
No,
No, not yet.
we're there.
Oh, okay, we are, so, let's, yeah, I apologize for being late, thanks. Let's consider the minutes from our last meeting.
I'll move approval.
Yeah, I thought they looked great. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Wendy, are you typing those up yourself? Was there a long?
I will be. I didn't type those up.
Oh,
no.
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Do we have any members of the public? No. You are? Okay. Do you want to, have you already introduced yourself?
We did.
Okay.
Hi.
Do we have anything that's not on the agenda to cover? Okay. All right, so then moving on to staff updates. Wendy, do you have?
Okay, I do have a handout, and I made a copy for everybody of the matching fund projects.
While you talk.
Oh, yeah, that'd be great. I'll keep, did I keep one? Yeah, no, I've got one, okay. Yeah, these are just the matching fund projects and events that we funded. And I put that together in preparation for communications assistance on getting the word out. So hopefully we can get a few more people at some of these events. So I won't go over them because you're very familiar with them, but you will see one in here that was from one of our earlier seasons, and that is on the second page, May 20 and 22, or 20 through 22 is a juggling performance and workshops in public parks by Luther Bangert, who's the juggler. And so he'll be doing events in the parks this spring, this May. But he was approved last year, and I think it was due to the pandemic that his events were rescheduled to this May. And then the rest of them just give a little bit of an overview of what they are, and if they aren't events, they're listed at the very end as being the two mural paintings that start, one on the I-Corps business, or boxing building, and the other on the alley doors downtown, by the downtown district. So that's just FYI, and if you can make any of these, it would be terrific to mingle and say, hey, you were part of the committee that approved those funds. And if you can't, at least you know about them and you can share it, so.
Yeah, this is awesome. Thank you for
Yeah.
putting it together.
Yeah, certainly. The other thing that I was going to mention is the Lucas Farms project that is the neighborhood working with an artist, Ben Farrar, who's trying to come up with a series of historic signs that will indicate, historic places in the neighborhood. And he's done an initial concept that has not been shared widely with the neighborhood. That's the next step on that. And then, of course, engineering we'll need to approve of all the locations, et cetera, too there. And the designs, which have started off, let's call it interestingly, so. And those are the only two things that I was gonna update you on now. There are a lot of things out there cooking, but those are probably the two that are most immediate.
Great. Do you have anything on the Lucas Farms of the initial concepts you could share, or is it not to that point?
It's really not to that
Okay.
point, and if you saw it, you would probably go, huh? So we've asked them to refine that initial concept. You know, for lack of a better description, looked a little like somebody was putting a fork in the ground and so there are tines sticking up, which is kind of a funny look.
Don't want anyone to be impaled.
Okay.
No.
Exactly.
Okay.
So,
Iowa
they're
City's
working with the
version of
neighborhood.
Spoon Bridge and Cherry.
Oh, yeah.
They're working
Forks.
with the neighborhood.
Yeah.
It's got a farm vibe, though. Working.
All right. So the update to Blackhawk Mini Park project
Yeah.
for Dawson?
Talked to Dawson today, who sends his regrets he was not able to come to the meeting when I had every indication up until now that he would. So today on the agenda, we have two things to vote on. One is to approve the concept, and the other is to approve the draft agreement that we would be entering into with him. But I think it might merit some discussion on whether we want to continue entertaining his work in this project, just to make sure. There's been quite a pattern of, and several of you have been involved in earlier meetings, concept-type meetings at Blackhawk Mini Park and other places where he's either not shown or needed to make some other arrangements for another reason. So, and we try to do everything we can to send texts and make it all happen, but it's been challenging to say the least. And we've known this for a while about him. So I guess I would suggest you discuss whether or not you want to entertain this concept and an agreement with him.
Yeah, because when we talked to him last, he said that he would prepare a digital, like, proof, basically, right?
Right.
Or was he waiting to get our approval before he did
Yeah,
that?
he was waiting to get your approval to move forward with the concept, with the idea being that, you know, he would be paid for his initial conceptual work here, and the first installment of 3 for $5,000 total would be $1,600. But in order for him to do more work, we would enter into the contract first, which would essentially guarantee his other two payments of the same amount. So
Did you all see his initial proposal, the sketch, and kind of the precedent?
There's just not much to it. Is there any other verbiage that's going to be on it, or text or anything?
There would be.
There would be,
Yeah.
but, okay.
yeah, he would, this is, I suppose I should have put it up on a PowerPoint, but this was the graphic that he showed, and this was essentially, you know, the very beginnings of a basic layout where a drawing of Blackhawk would be on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side would be a bit about his life, who he was, why he was important, and then a bit, and I'm thinking a bit is a paragraph, about why Blackhawk Mini Park. What is it about Blackhawk and that public space that came together to make that, and why? And so, you know, Dawson had talked about using those historical facts, using native language, and you see a bit of that on the top. That is I'm understanding that is that is Blackhawk's name in the indigenous, and I think it's Saki language. Anyway, so yeah, it would be a full interpretive panel, but he hadn't written it yet, and this is all we had at our meeting with them a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I mean, I was a little surprised how kind of sterile it felt, like just a stainless steel like sign on a podium. But the budget is really small, so I don't know how much, and I don't know Dawson's like sculptural, like, I don't know, this is very kind of literal of the, it's less art and more like a historical marker sign, I don't know. But maybe that's fine. What do you guys think?
Is there, in terms of like are there locations for things other than like a panel? Thinking about that space and like, right, where the original mural was, the building owners put in those windows and like didn't want painting on that wall, as like, like in terms of identifying what is possible in the space.
Yeah, the committee met a couple of times with Scott, who was there, with the Downtown District, who was there, because they do a lot of programming in that space. Parks was not there at those meetings, so it was engineering, Downtown District, staff, a couple staff people, and let's see, Steve, Eddie, Andrea. I think those were the three. Hi, how are you? I'm Anita. Guess what? You get to sit up at the dais. Yeah.
Sorry, Al.
No, you're fine.
A little jet lagged.
Anita is let me just pause on the Dawson Davenport thing. And we can introduce Anita, and pronounce your last name for us.
Jung.
It is Jung, okay. Anita Jung is the newly appointed committee member by the council, so welcome. I'm Wendy Ford, and the staff liaison to the committee, and it'd probably be good to do introductions again, I would think.
So my name is Scott Silvers. I'm the assistant city engineer. I'm actually filling in for Ron Konecki, who ordinarily sits on this. He's our public works director.
I'm Steve Miller, and I'm currently the chair of the committee and an architect in town.
Hi, Eddie Boykin, committee member since 2019.
Andrea Truitt, I'm the vice person, chair, vice chair, I think we've been throwing around president, chair, things. And this is, I think, my 4th year on the committee. So.
I'm Dominic Dongilli. I'm a member at large. I've been on the committee since 2020.
And I'm Julie Seidel Johnson. I'm the Parks and Recreation Director for the city, and I've been on the committee now 6 years, I think, since I got here, so.
Yeah, Anita, would you like to say a little bit about yourself?
I'm an artist, and I'm a professor at the university. I teach in the printmaking area, and I'm currently on a Fulbright to India, but I have a flex Fulbright, so I got back Tuesday, and here I am.
Awesome. Well, welcome.
Yeah.
Glad you're with us.
Okay, so we were on the agenda item of discussing the Black Hawk Mini Park concept, and I think we had described that we had met with Dawson at the park, and in discussing, and I think the question was, were there other locations that were discussed for artwork and other kinds of artwork, perhaps?
Yeah.
And there were several locations were discussed early on. It was freezing cold, maybe December. And then Dawson had some time to think about it. I think we might have met once again in the interim, and then a couple of weeks ago when he proposed what you had seen in the packet there, the interpretive panel in the west sort of branch of an L-shaped planter that is butt up against the Artisans Gallery building. And so that was the concept. that he has presented after, knowing what was possible, looking at the budget, seeing the spaces and that sort of thing.
I mean, oh,
I was just gonna say, I know, so like Black Hawk's autobiography was the first Native American autobiography in English, and like there's a long tradition of printing and these like print front plates of portraits of Native Americans. So I was interested in hearing more about the concept. In my mind, that's like where my mind went in terms of like what is this invoking, and it made me think about like the history of print culture and like Native American representation as community figures within like the English-speaking world. So that's where my mind went. So I was interested in seeing like where, because there are different portraits by different people of Black Hawk, so like how he chose his representation and things. So that's where my mind went.
well, I was just going to say, I mean, as we've talked about, given the budget and given also the spatial constraints of so much happens in the Ped Mall and the Black Hawk Mini Park by the downtown district, it sort of feels like in that to do something in Black Hawk Mini Park means that you're already a bit constrained on what you can do in the space. So I feel like given that and then the budget, that an interpretive panel or something more flat was a reasonable, I think, a reasonable object. It is out of the way, fairly, I don't mean remote, but it's not, on the pavement. It won't have to work around or have things, other objects or tables, around it. And I think there is something nice about an interpretive panel in some sense, but I do see, but it's an interpretive panel, I don't know. But it seemed reasonable given the constraints of space and I think budget, that it's taking the form of a panel. But
I think my concern would be his ability to deliver at this point, if it's been this much work to get to this type of sketch. If we truly wanted the interpretive panel, the 5,000 would, that's about the cost of what it takes for most of these interpretive panels that we do anywhere. So I'm not sure his budget is accurate either, to be honest with you, but I just wonder if we're gonna keep going and he's not gonna ever deliver if he hasn't been able to do more than what we have here. My thought.
Does he have a track record of delivering anything of this kind of scale to the city before?
Not that I'm
Or-
aware.
I don't think to the city.
I know Dawson.
Yeah?
He was a student of mine. He's a leader in his community. So he's very, very invested and busy with tribal matters. He does have time issues, deadline issues, he does. But I think this could be really beautiful. I'm wondering about some of the text. There's a lot of space in here. And I know you don't want something reading heavy or saturated, but I do think it could be interesting. I've really loved the book projects I live by Willow Creek, and I like reading the books and things. And, but some kind of an invitation for a contemplative walk in this park or something, just maybe something with a little bit of, just not instructive, but guided, a consideration of Black Hawk. I love that, he has the name and he has the pronunciation, but maybe just a very, very small sentence or two about the importance of this figure, and an invitation to consider that, that this park has been named after this person. But once he delivers the design, isn't this going to be outsourced and fabricated?
He would make it as well.
He was saying that he would create all the stuff digitally and get it printed by someone who can print on stainless. And then, but he would fabricate, like weld the stainless post to it and fabricate it all himself.
Okay.
But I mean, I don't know, we should probably do a price check with, like a sign company that, or, I mean, you said we've done additional.
I would typically budget 5,000 for a
Yeah.
sign like this, just to have a sign company design it,
And do
make
it.
it, install
Yeah.
it, the whole, so.
And it seems like, you know, the sign for the park below, you know, the river landing, I mean, like a lot of that has safety stuff. It just can't be whatever. It has to be pretty substantial and,
As far as the construction of it, you're saying?
yeah.
Yeah.
Handle a skateboarder.
Which lots of people, it's gonna be right at butt height, you know, people are gonna lean on it for sure.
Could we, would it be possible to kind of revise, I mean, I think we've made clear kind of through past meetings, similarly, Anita, what you have mentioned, that like truly committing to, amidst this broader like climate of contributing explicitly funds to BIPOC artists and like creatives that have meaningful connections and track records of like leadership, sticking to that. Sticking to that. Would it be possible to think in terms of like shifting the role into like a bit of a consultant, which is like he has provided initial concept, but if he could like provide the digital design and then pursuing fabrication like via the action of this, removing some of that responsibility, and being able to say that this was, I mean, and not to say like cheaply or unethically or kind of insincerely that like designed and conceptualized by Dawson Davenport, but remove some of that logistical deadline-based work
I wonder.
take that off of his plate.
That's interesting. I wonder how he would react, like if that would be a relief to him, or if like the fabrication of it is something he was excited about or something, you know? I don't know him well enough
That's
to.
a good conversation to have with him.
Yeah.
You know, the drawing is beautiful, and he would probably want to oversee whoever's going to be etching that into
Mhm.
the metal that it's going to be made from, but unless he had a plan for the stand, it just seems like it's just going to be a stand, and
He did talk about like doing some kind of tribal pattern. He had some
Yeah.
patterns about that on the legs.
Yep.
But once we got it out there, you know, the legs are going to be quite short. So I don't know if.
Yeah, because that planter sticks up quite a ways, and so to get it at that right level, the legs are only going to be, I don't know, maybe a foot.
Yeah, between 1 and 2 feet probably.
so what I would say to him, if I were talking to him, is why not make a frame with those tribal designs and then have the Black Hawk mini park, and I really love these birds, you know, and just have that kind of fit within the tribal thing, you know, and just
Right.
have that, work with a fabricator to do that.
That's making me hit on the idea of like 19th century frames and having very ornate frames, which is a little bit different than the frontispiece and printmaking, but I don't know, it sort of fits with that time. But I really like that suggestion of doing more of a frame, you know, to really work in the pattern versus,
Something that'd be mostly hidden.
I know, and the little stubby legs. That's,
Right.
So could I suggest that we try to have, that when you make contact with him one more time, and with some of these ideas and suggestions, that we give him one more month and we reconsider it next month at the meeting, and if we don't have any drawings or any forward motion on it, then maybe it's a different decision at that point? Is that?
Yeah, I mean, could we approve the basic concept and say we really need like a digital draft by next month? And
Yeah, the only thing that I wonder about now is, so our budget is only $5,000. If we were going to suggest that he,
Right, that would-
that he only has the design role and not the fabrication role, then his fee would go down as well. And I'm
Right.
assuming, or we would have to come up with
Yeah.
money for the fabrication of the thing as well.
exactly. I imagine he could do it for that. It's just he's not making much money by the time you buy materials and
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
so.
Yeah, I would wonder if we could sort of think about maybe redrafting or thinking about the agreement differently as, maybe presenting as following on the same path, but then also perhaps as designer, designer consultant, and having some of those steps maybe laid out. I know that's an extra draft or an extra sort of contract.
Oh, that's
to draft,
doable.
but
Yeah, we do that all the time.
I know, but you've got a whole lot.
I always feel bad like showing up once a month and being like, what about this? What about this?
Yeah, but I'm sort of wondering if it is, being
mean, if
able
we
to sort of
present
split the
it-
different as in two different manners, but then,
Mm-hmm.
yes, it's a little less money, but then, there could be, it's not just all going to design and fabrication. But then it might be able to split the difference between getting getting the project to where we need it to then perhaps then say, okay, well, maybe we can allocate funds as the committee towards the fabrication portion of that, and maybe think about that as we come to a new fiscal year. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it certainly seems worth a conversation with him to see if he might bite on that idea. And then we could figure out, how the financial part of it works for his part, were he only to do the art, or, it would stay the same, I'm sure, if he designed and fabricated the whole thing.
Right.
See where that takes us. It probably puts getting it done out of reach for this summer, I think, possibly.
Sure.
But,
Sure.
but I think that sounds completely doable.
I mean, and again, Anita, this is so awesome. Like, this is your first meeting, and all of a sudden, it's like, ooh, this is so.
This is
like,
what I do.
You just hop right on
It's
in.
perfect.
I do this all day.
Yeah.
This is a former student of mine. Let's go.
No, it's a beautiful drawing. I love the birds, and I think, there's enough space, there's enough, like the tribal order, and it's really, it's really nice. I think it
Yeah.
wouldn't take him much time, and taking that fabrication off his plate might make it possible to get done. But I have no idea the costs of these.
Right. Does that seem like something we should look into? Like, Julie, when you guys do those, do you always go through the same people, or do you bid it out, or?
There's a couple choices, but yeah, that we would do. So it would be possible if he provided us with artwork electronically to
Yeah.
have it fabricated from that point.
But you think it'd be pretty much 5,000? Yeah. So we would need to find additional
Mm-hmm.
money in our
I
budget.
hope I'm wrong, but that's what I would budget for.
I agree,
No, that
makes
feels.
sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, let's approach Dawson first, see if he bites on that. Then we'll see if there's a way we can make it work somehow budgetarily. We might be able to.
Do we want to vote to approve the concept?
Probably should.
Then that way he can say yes, and then there's no delay in getting the digital draft
Mhm.
started.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Make a motion about that.
Motion to approve Dawson's concept?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then do we also want to approve the draft agreement?
That would work in the case that he were
To
going
want
to
to do the
fabricate it.
fabrication?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we need to wait until
wait
we
on that
have
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would
information on that.
vote to wait.
Okay.
But does he, based on what we talked about when we met with him last, he's expecting payment once we approve, the first payment, once we approve the concept, right?
I don't think necessarily, if
Okay.
if the world was perfect, yes, but he understands the world is not perfect, and he's let us down a few times, and that maybe the committee wasn't going to approve the concept. But now that the committee is, let's take that step forward. I agree, wait on the contract as we wait to figure out how he wants to do that, if he wants to fabricate it or not. And if he does, then I think we owe him the first tranche of the funding.
I was gonna say, looking at the contract, it sounds like the digital proof of concept is the preliminary, or is like the proposal, is like that first stage, and then it's like actual, well, I guess progress based on fabrication.
Well, it was actually, today was going to be the preliminary review of the concept using just his drawing that was in the packet and the images that would sort of show the size and scope of the interpretive panel. So that was going to be today approval, and that alone would trigger the first payment of 1667 basically. Then the next payment wouldn't be due until after he submitted the electronic copies for fabrication. And then when the whole thing was complete, he would get the final.
But you feel like he'll, with our approval of the concept, he'll be fine working towards the draft for the next month until our next meeting, or?
I can't say, Steve. I hate to make a commitment for somebody.
Yeah. I mean, just my sense of him is he's not obviously doing this for the money. He's like
Yeah.
doing it because he loves it and
Right.
he cares about the subject matter. So, but I want to be respectful of his time and stuff. So, if whatever, like, if he's like, no big deal, I can keep working on it. I know you'll pay eventually, and it's not about timing of it, then great. But
Yeah.
I guess my question would be, if we took over the fabrication, would we pay him any more than the first payment?
I almost feel like it could perhaps be split into something where there's the initial payment from the approval, but then maybe a second one for the full digital, but not in the same amount as obviously the 5,000. In my head, I was just thinking, could it be split into like, if he were amenable to the designer kind of consultant role, could that be, 2 payments of 1,500, and so it would be a total of 3,000 perhaps? Or if, he would want to continue with full fabrication, then continue on the 5,000 path or something like that. But I suppose then it would be, what would the initial payment be, depending on what, which path might work best for Dawson.
Yeah, I really don't think we should approve a contract without him being here as he
Yeah.
promised for a meeting. So I really think we should hold off on the overall contract till we have answers of those questions and could talk about it next month.
Sure, yeah.
Right, so, yeah, we'll have talked to him. We can restructure the payments and the amounts basically based on a conversation with him if we want to.
Yeah. I mean,
Okay, so concept approved, leave the contract until we know which way we're going to go with
Yeah.
him. Okay. And so I don't think you even need to vote on the contract, just let it.
we'll postpone
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Anything else on the Blackhawk Mini Park, or should we move on to South District?
I think we can move on.
Yeah, it's your show, Eleanor.
When do you wanna, I don't know, you start, I don't know what
Oh.
to say, so.
Okay. Well, this is Eleanor Levin. Levin, sorry. And Eleanor is one of the leaders of the South District neighborhood who have come up with an idea of creating bus stop benches, having 2 of those. And let me back up just a little bit. This was the neighborhood art project, which was budgeted $12,000. So we met with the group. The group narrowed down some really neat ideas to one that seemed doable and seemed as though it could fit within the $12,000 budget. And that was to create to have two benches created, and not just painted regular benches, but have two benches designed and created by artists, ideally from the neighborhood. Each of the two artists, one each for each bench, would receive $5,000 that would have to cover their materials and time and costs for the design and fabrication of the bench. And the idea was to, in a way, to sort of groom other artists and potentially grow the project, would be to have a mentor assist young or emerging artists in their projects. And these mentors would be assigned, it might be one mentor for both or one each, would be assigned to help advise and be there for the artists chosen to do these benches, and give them sort of background knowledge, courage even to perhaps grow into a mentorship role on their own, and help other artists into the future, and build that program as well. So that was the gist of it, I think, but Eleanor, feel free to expand
I'll
upon
just
it.
say a little bit about kind of, it was an interesting process because essentially, we started out by just asking for, gathering public comment on what people wanted to see, what arts they thought were lacking in the neighborhood, and it was all over the board. So of course, that's where our conversation started with this group, and our conversation ranged from cultural dance to murals to placemaking and signage to, yeah, it ranged the gamut. But what we kept coming back to was a couple of things. And one was that there's a challenge for new artists to figure out how to work within the systems that are in place to get paid to make their art. And so that was something that, as the discussion developed, it was kind of fascinating to see this mentorship idea keep coming back around. And that's where the real hub of, we settled on, a lot of the ideas initially were pretty grandiose, some of them completely out of the realm of realism, but settling on this fairly realistic notion of the two bus benches, both at locations that do not currently have seating, both at locations that are in the South District, one at Keokuk and Keokuk and Southgate, right by the current Dream City, used to be the Kingdom Center, and the other at Highway 6 and Hines Road. And those two locations being places where there is currently nowhere to sit, but are fairly well-used stops in the district. So not only having these functional products come out of the project, but also have this growth in terms of institutional knowledge of artists within the district. And not necessarily saying that the artists have to be district residents, but the other thing that kind of kept coming back up in the conversation was wanting to push for something that would highlight the character of the South District. The fact that the South District is the most diverse part of Iowa City in terms of race, in terms of language, in terms of cultural background, including this sort of spirit of community that the South District has really been able to prove itself for over the past 4 years, that we've worked so hard to show and to demonstrate over and over, time and time again. There's a quote in the RFQ that I love that says, "We can imagine neighbors saying, 'I'll meet you at the insert descriptor,' like the Rainbow bus stop bench or the Dragon bus stop bench or the Pyramid bus stop bench." The goal is to have these be functional landmarks in the neighborhood, things that people can, things that could be Pokestops, basic. That was one thing that somebody kind of brought up. I don't know if that's a reference that make sense to the committee members, but things that people will notice and love and not, to overcome some of that, the same stuff that the South District SMID is working to overcome, some of the industrial nature of the South District when you look at it from Highway 6. When you look at the South District from Highway 6, essentially you see Taco Bell. And you see Midwest One, which is beautiful, but it's a bank. So those are the things that we really were focused in on, was those two things, the character of what we wanted and that building of institutional knowledge so that more people know how the process works and don't feel intimidated by the possibility of putting their art out there in the community. This is an arts community, and we wanted to be part of getting more people involved in that. So, yeah, I think that's all I have to say.
Okay, and then the process would be that we would put out a request for qualifications, and you had that in your packet. Those applications to be the artist who gets to do the benches would come in the same online portal that we accept applications for any of our art projects. And then my assumption, and we can talk about this part of the process, is that the committee would be responsible for choosing the artist, and would somebody from the South District Neighborhood Group want to be in on those discussions?
I think, yes, that is, we were hoping that y'all would be the ones to actually select the artists in terms, with hopefully some input from the informal committee that gathered to come up with this idea, but you have more experience in terms of just looking at RFQ submissions and seeing, is this something realistic? Or do these people, you know, is this going to work? And so I think we would definitely appreciate the committee's guidance on that.
Yeah, so, right, and I would too, actually, this being the first RFQ that I've put out, and one that's got these two twists to it. One is it's for a neighborhood, and so the neighborhood should have a significant role in at least my thought process of choosing, you know, they've chosen the concept, then of choosing the art. So having somebody from the committee be a part of the discussions that chose that artist seemed to make sense. And then the other complication of it being the assignment of a mentor for the artists who are chosen. And that's part of the process that might be well done after the artists are chosen, when we know who they are, so that we can
Find someone well-suited.
find someone well-suited, right.
And we had talked about whether that would be a separate RFQ or what exactly that process would look like.
Yeah, yeah. And so if, as you recall, there was a $12,000 budget, $5,000 would go towards each bench, to the artist who would have to get the bench built and installed for that. There would be $2,000 remaining, which could be used for installing concrete pads if needed, or a pad, one is
One of the
needed.
locations needs a pad.
Yeah, and, or stipend for the mentor artist. But we didn't put dollar amounts on those because we don't have them yet. So that's your concept and the RFQ kind of together.
So, I did look at the RFQ. I don't have a packet, and I did not bring my laptop, so I am lacking when I say this.
Yeah, I'm
Sure.
looking at it on my phone here too.
But I would be curious to see if we could sort of, yes, we're using the online application system that we would use for this, but I would, wondering if we could just sort of, first of all, take it to the committee that you've had who kind of put this together to winnow things into a concept and a potential RFQ, but of being able to at least, it sounds like, run the applications through our application system, and then could we sort of then say, okay, neighborhood art RFQ committee, just kind of to say, hey, either disseminate, I'd leave that up to you and your colleagues and neighbors, to then come back, hey, we've got these applications, we kind of like these for the most part, and then bring it back to the public art. So there's a little bit more
Go to you first,
aesthetic
it doesn't go
control,
first.
and I feel like it should go for the aesthetic control first of what might be best suited or visually, aesthetically, and then sort of be able to say, okay, bring it back to the committee to then say, well, here's what we're seeing, or maybe what we're not seeing that we might need to see.
Makes sense. I mean, I was thinking more of like realism check first, then aesthetic check.
I
but
see.
I think it could go either
I don't know,
way.
I'm just sort of, this is something that, for me, these benches will be in your neighborhood, and so to sort of,
One of them will be a block from my house.
but I also feel like for me personally, I sort of have to have the aesthetic grab first, and then, so it's wanting to make sure that that is something,
I think that the members.
That is vetted
the
first
people
by
who
you.
came together to come up with this concept would be more than happy to look at concepts, if that's what you're, if that's.
I
what
sort
you're-
of like the idea of it going, applications are had, gathered, they go back to you, in the group, and then to say, we kind of like these, and then to kind of come to,
I think that would
um,
work very well, and people
the
would be
committee.
happy to do that.
but,
So
but,
I have kind of three concerns or questions, topics. I really think that for your budget, I would suggest you concentrate on one instead of two. I just feel like we're going to be in the same boat we are with what we just talked about, trying to do 2 benches at $5,000 each. And I'm really concerned about the type of materials you might get for that kind of a budget. So I would say that'd be one suggestion, is look at the budget, and it seems to me like getting one bench, and maybe it's more of a, not just a bench, but a sense of place at that point. So maybe it's just a little bit bigger than just the bench, but it's at one site instead of 2. We would want to include in it needs to be accessible, and Scott can jump in on more on the engineering part of it, the heights and all of that, because in the end, it's on city property for city purpose. And then finally, back to the materials, knowing that it's probably my staff that'll have to maintain it after several years. I really want to encourage use of sustainable and long-term materials. For the $5,000 bench, I could see, for instance, getting an artist who wanted to chainsaw a log, which could be artistic, could fit what you're thinking quite well, but has like a 2-year lifespan. So, or maybe a little longer, it might be. But that's the other part, that's another reason to maybe go for the higher budget and one bench and get a really good, successful first one done, and then look at growing that project. About 5 or 6 years ago, when I first started, we actually did a grant application for a Play Everywhere grant that included fun bus stops and had quite a few different concepts that I can get you. We came really close, but we didn't get the money at that time. But
And how much was budgeted for each bus stop?
well, that was
Do
a
you
whole bus structure
structure
and
and
everything.
with the roof and
Yeah,
stuff.
so, yeah.
I would say just budgetarily, I think Marcia gave most of the guidance on that. That was not, I mean, I don't think anyone who came together in our committee felt confident on, but the range that we were suggested was that it was unlikely that we would be able to do more than 2, but that 2 seemed reasonable, but
A plain black park bench out there is $1,500. So having that with the artistic part of
And
it
if,
built
if you had
on
someone
that-
build that plain black custom
by hand.
Yeah.
by hand, it would be 3 times that much.
Right. So
I was-
that's my big concern.
Yeah, I wanted to mirror that, just that, one, the accessibility requirements. Also knowing it's a lot for an emerging artist to like construct a bench, and we also just had the bench in the park, that the mosaic benches in the park that were falling apart and sending glass shards every time they mowed the lawn. So wondering if, with all those things, if it could be something. I love the idea of bus stop art, but like a prefabricated bench that then the artist somehow decorated, augmented, made their own versus like starting from scratch to construct writ large.
Yeah.
I think that's a big task for an emerging artist, and I think it also just removes a lot of the sustainability, accessibility.
Yeah, that's
requirements.
kind of what I was thinking. I have in my mind the benchmark benches that were done in the Ped Mall. Maybe something similar to that where,
I will say there was a distinct distaste for amongst the committee for the suggestion of doing anything that was like basically the downtown benches. There was a definite pushback to the idea of anything that would look like it was incorporated with the downtown.
I want to say, like, building on that, so if you're familiar with the black park benches that we have out at a lot of the different parks. So that bench comes with, you could just get the seat part of it without the back. And you could give each artist that to start with as their basis, and then because then whatever they were building around it for structure or whatever wouldn't be the structure that people are either sitting on or that is the substantial part. And you might be closer to $5,000 if you did something like that.
So the artist, are you saying the artist would design the back of the bench
They
into
would
whatever?
design, like,
Whatever
I would, like, you could,
structure around it,
you
so
could
that-
do whatever you wanted around it. Just in the end, you would make it so that people sit on that basic part of the bench.
Okay.
I don't know, I'm just throwing that out as an idea.
I was trying to.
I kind of share your committee's, like, knee-jerk, bad reaction to, like, just taking a prefabricated thing. Like, it takes away most of the artistry from it, I feel like. I don't know. Well, it could be so much, like, as far as placemaking, you know, it's like, it's not just a painted bench or, like, a decorated bench, you know. I think there's but I do, like, my mind was going where Julie's first comment is like, it's hard to do that have that kind of ambition with $5,000 for a bench. So I think if you wanted to make it all custom and it's all like this artistic, custom placemaking bench thing, then it feels like the budget's just too small.
I think along those lines, you know, we just, as a city, you know, with these benches being located in public right away, we need to make sure they're safe too. So,
Based on that, I would actually recommend having a mentor first, like approaching somebody who has the expertise to build a safe bench to statistics, and have them so that they can kind of look ahead to who they might be
That's a good idea.
Okay.
collaborating with in many ways, or who they might be mentoring, you know, so that we're not picking some idea that's so far out there that all that mentor is going to be doing is reeling back in the artist, which is not mentoring. It's,
And
you know,
you
that's
know-
not like what a mentor wants to do. So I think having them involved in the beginning and in the selection and in sort of giving some criteria and guidance of materials. I mean, because, you know,
Yeah.
I could see an artist going out and getting a bunch of MDF board and just, you know, but it's not gonna last.
Yeah, no.
It's gonna look great, but it's just, you know.
Which then.
One artist we had some success with is Kara, who, what's that, I can't remember her last
Briggs
name.
Farmer?
Yeah.
Yes, who's
Yeah.
done the metal work out in a couple of our different parks, a couple really nice sculptural projects, and someone like that could be a really good mentor, and I would have confidence that she could come up with the actual structure, take the idea and make it into a structure that was serviceable and safe and all of those things. So that might be one way to.
And when you're talking about a younger artist, are you talking like a high school student or an undergraduate student?
I mean, I
or
can't speak for any of, I guess we didn't put numbers on it. I was not picturing someone who's not an adult. I was picturing an adult. But I guess we did not put numbers on it in our meeting. I think it was more, we were discussing, there was a lot of discussion that came up, because I'll put it this way, I'm a theater artist. So my role on the committee was mostly like keeping things moving and taking notes. Most of the other people there represented visual artists. And a lot of it was, it is hard for people to get started in applying for arts grants, working with like RFQs, sourcing materials, those kinds of things. It would be good for people to learn, to have somebody to go to when they have questions, to have someone assigned to them.
So then I'm kind of wondering if almost the request for
But not thinking, sorry, but not thinking like, but a kid needs this. It was more like, no, adult artists still need.
Sure.
Somebody thinks, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just sort of wondering then if the first place to start with the request for qualifications would really be sort of a request for a mentor, you know, and sort of thinking about
Yeah.
maybe starting with the mentor or someone that that could be trusted, and then to sort of start there and then maybe work the next step.
Yeah, I was wondering that too. Like the mentor, if you had a good mentor, I don't know if it's Kara or someone you already know, if you had someone in mind, but they could help craft even the RFP and you know, like they could help hone, you know, the budget per bench and
Well,
I don't
But
know.
it almost like, seems like all those conversations have to happen before the bench is selected. So, you know, this mentor might be, I mean, I don't know how many submissions you normally would get for something.
4 or 5 usually.
So this mentor would then be to all the submissions, getting them up to the standard of being able to put forth a proposal,
Oh, that's interesting.
right? I mean, because
That would be, yeah, that would be.
that has to be in a proposal.
That
How
would be
much does
great.
this cost? Where are you getting these materials? Like,
Right.
that's part of that proposal.
Yeah, because, yeah, I was either thinking like that or have like, you know, it's finding the right mentor for this overall project. And then maybe it's, again, the mentor being able to say, well, here's not the idea, but then like, here's what kind of material will work for the bench, you know, for this project, et cetera. And sort of where it's like almost the RFQ skeleton is made by the mentor, and then from there being able to kind of branch out and into finding the emerging artist. I don't know.
And teaching them
Yeah.
to come up with these, you know, like where this stuff, you know, it's just not pulled from the ether. It's like there's a
Yeah.
pragmatic, systemic, you know, kind of way of approaching it. Like coming up with, you know, with a proof of your idea, and how do you do that?
Probably end up needing to pay your mentor probably
Yeah.
a little more than we had in mind. But if you're only going to do one bench, then you've got a little more to work with as well.
Do you think there'll be strong resistance to the idea of like increasing the budget and doing one per bench and just focusing on one, or?
It was discussed. Everything was discussed. I feel quite certain there will be at least one person in strong opposition to it, because there was a definite goal of creating more than one opportunity.
Get that.
But at the same time, we also kept coming back to, we want this to be realistic. We want this to be, we don't want to create something that's then not going to last or not going to
I mean,
live up to the idea that we had in our heads.
but then I would almost say that if you had like a really successful bench and a really successful project, right, that then that's already proof for a portfolio for other, you know, funding that you might apply for, or, you know, is it coming back for other city funds in some way, or the, I can't remember what you called it, was it the play?
Everywhere grant, that was a one-time thing.
Oh, okay, okay. But if that would be, like, you'd have this real jewel, right, to then kind of work on for a potential, we've done it this way for other investors or grants, I don't know.
Well, you would have a proof of ideation, and then you can go to the Arts Council. It can open up other funding streams.
Yeah,
I'll be honest, and I will be amazed if this ad hoc group that's been meeting about this bench ever meets again after this project. We literally came together because this money existed. And my leadership of this group has been only because someone needed to make sure it happened, because it would have been a waste of this incredible gift that y'all decided to make if it hadn't happened.
It's funny.
So
I've
that's
truly.
the concern. I'm trying just to be realistic in terms
Yeah.
of, we're not necessarily seeing this as something that springboards to future
Okay.
projects.
But a
Which I think was
success-
part of the planning, was that trying to make this mean as much as possible. But there was definitely an urge to be realistic and to have something come out of it that was the best possible product that it could be. So I'm taking your suggestions.
But just as opportunity can help build and bring together community, a success can do the same thing. And so that could be motivation then to get that second bench made. And it could even be the same artist then would
Yes.
be able to go forward and say, you know, and with the mentor and you know, it's, have an alternate bench or, you know, or another person that had applied and gotten close, maybe then they could take that idea elsewhere too.
What, was there anyone on the committee that has a pulse on kind of who mentors could be that might be from the neighborhood or
I got
invested?
the sense that people did have ideas in mind, but I don't know, there weren't names thrown around, and I don't know whether they were just, whether people were kind of hesitant to say, I know somebody, or, I don't know. We were very focused on what is our concept, what are we trying to do, what is the
Yeah.
goal of this? And I don't know how much people were hesitant to say like, I'm gonna put my friend forward for this, you know.
Yeah.
I know the Systems Unlimited artists were really interested in being a part of this project until we settled on bus benches and like a metal work project, and they basically said like, well, that's not gonna work for our artists, but.
Oh, you said woodworkers?
No,
Or who?
metal work. The Systems Unlimited was really interested, the Systems Unlimited artists were really interested in being a part of the project, but then once we determined we were doing bus benches, which generally have to be a metal product, that's beyond the scope of most of the Systems Unlimited artists.
They were interested in painting, I think, right?
Yeah, they were interested, or I think like mural work or mosaic work or things like that, but,
It could be plastic though too, right? I mean, it doesn't have to be metal. You can do very cool colored plastic.
I'm not the visual artist.
Yeah.
But then that's a great role for a mentor right
Yeah,
there.
to say
Yeah.
what
Say,
materials
oh,
could work
yeah.
and would last and. I mean,
Unfortunately, plastic lasts a really long time.
Yeah, it's like,
So I'm kind of hearing that the RFQ switch from being one for artists to one for for the mentor. And that
Is it-
we rejigger the budget.
Yeah, I mean, I'm wondering, does it really need to be an RFQ? Could it just be identify?
I think we would need to make an RFQ, and then if people on the committee have names, I would recommend they have those people submit.
I'm just wondering if it's, yeah, like if it's one, I love the concept of the mentor and the placement. I love the whole idea of this project, and I would wish it could be two, too. I just wonder, like, at that point, if you're making it one project and you're putting the RFQ out for a mentor, it's almost like they would just do it, you know, if they have the expertise. And so, I don't know. That if it gets fuzzy to me when it's.
I'm kind of wondering how we go about selecting the mentor and if we need to develop criteria for that.
We have an RFQ, it would include the criteria, I would imagine, right? Isn't that part of it?
Yeah, our RFQs already ask for, you know, your your artist statement, your background, what similar experience you have for a project like this, that kind of thing. So I think an RFQ could be tweaked to, you know, call for mentor candidates.
But I mean, yeah, if that's important, I could see crafting an RFQ to lay out this whole concept. And maybe it is still 2 benches, you just scale it back to, and they help the applicants. Or, you know, maybe they could propose a $10,000 bench or a $5,000 bench, and it's just like, and then the committee kind of decides what's the right application of the resources. I don't know. I feel like there is a role for the mentor to help, like,
Even in the submission process.
to help people, yeah, the artists. So, if you, yeah, to me, it's starting to make sense to me to try to get a mentor to sign up for this process. It kind of delays it all a
We're
bit.
not in a
but-
hurry.
Okay.
Okay, so to recap, I'm hearing that we should approach the RFP to select a mentor first. We should probably work with that, with whatever mentor is selected, I would think, to help us determine how the $12,000 budget is distributed, although we do need to provide a stipend.
We need to establish what part of it is going to be there.
Yeah, yeah. It seems like we could probably work together on crafting that,
Yeah.
and then at our next meeting, revisit the RFQ and the process for moving forward on it, if that sounds right. I just don't think we're close enough to make more progress on that yet. Does that sound good?
That sounds good. I just might not be at your next meeting.
We could probably do, oh, okay, here.
Yeah, just looking at if your first
Yeah.
Thursday of the month, there's a possibility I'll be busy that week.
Okay. Okay, so we
It'll be
can get
5 days before my election.
some work done. Oh, yeah. Just a few things.
Just a little busy.
Does that sound good? Okay. All right.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate, because this is exactly the kind of guidance that we were hoping to get from y'all in terms of like, okay, here's our weird dream project that we cobbled together out of whole cloth. You know, what does it sound like to outsiders who aren't in this weird bubble that we put ourselves in? So, thank you.
Can you remind me how the 12,000 came to be? Was that a number that we just, as a committee, put together, or like?
Oh, I think it goes back
Was it a
to, I can't say exactly, but I think it goes back a couple of years to when the South District did their own mural, paid for
Uh-huh.
the mural on the backside of the Pepperwood Plaza building. And I'm not sure how 12,000 got,
I have
In-
from Marcia.
you have something in there?
Yeah.
And I think Public Art Funds did help pay for that mural.
So this
We-
is-
We had a grant for that we gave them.
So the Neighborhood Art Program, a project that was funded for several years in the earlier years of the Public Art Program and resurrected 2 years ago, allocating funded to the Lucas Farms neighborhood. It does not say where the number came from though. We recommended the funding to be offered to the South District to create art in your neighborhood, providing a budget of $12,000.
Cool. So that's, we probably have that ongoing, if it's part of the neighborhood art program, the South District could apply again, do another bus stop next year, or whatever, bus stop, bus bench.
I don't know if it's an application.
This is it. We didn't apply. We didn't ask for.
I think it's kind of been moved to different neighborhoods.
Yeah.
That's funny.
I thought there was I thought there was a request from the South District neighborhood.
We're just like, have some money.
There's-
I mean, not that, I guess
We
this,
didn't even know this was a thing.
not to waste
so.
time, but.
No, there was with the mural. I remember and distinctly that
Yes,
application,
that's
but
entirely separate.
I can't say if I can't remember any other requests coming through except for funding for the
So
mural.
that was, the mural was 3 years ago. This was October of 2021.
I remember bringing back the neighborhood art program, but I don't remember how we decided which neighborhoods.
But I'm also not sure it's been resurrected long enough for us to have sort of a real process pattern, or high demand from, 7 neighborhoods and we have,
Right.
funding for one. It just seems very casual right now, just as it is resurrected, so.
If I remember, no, I mean, I guess this is beating a dead horse, but if I remember correctly, Marcia, not to put words in our beloved Marcia's mouth, but I remember Marcia indicating that like Southside was like really gung-ho, had a new group of people, were really excited about opportunities.
Yeah,
We should put the money there, which I'm happy that we are.
yeah, for sure.
Um,
That
I
sounds right.
totally believe that.
yeah.
I mean, that feels like that's probably how that went, and it feels like the neighborhood art programs has been like, hey, somebody inquired, hey, another neighborhood has inquired, hey, it's not.
Yeah, we could probably formalize it a bit to make it fair and let other people apply, but.
And I don't believe it's a separate program, it's just part of our budget, of the
That's what I mean,
Public Art
yeah.
Committee's budget, and so it could be allocated differently each.
Right, which then is like, what is the process, or how do we want to allocate that? And then it could be, maybe, there's
an
this money this year,
RFQ
and then-
or something from neighborhoods.
I've just realized that the money I put in the parking meter has run out.
okay.
So I don't know if you all need anything else from.
No, I think, we'll be in touch about redoing the
perfect. Yeah, you and I.
RFP. Yeah, sounds good.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Are there any other staff reports?
No, I was gonna send along, we still are two committee members short, and both of them need to fill art and design professional slots. So I thought what I would do is send the link to everybody, and you can forward them to your friends, the link to apply, that is.
Yeah.
Forward them to your friends and other professionals who you think might make good additions to the committee.
Well,
But that is all I had.
so could I inquire with you later if a particular person did apply and just was not accepted?
Yes, you may.
In the sense that I'm like, I did send it to someone before. They seemed interested. I just want to know about follow-through because I may harass them again, perhaps.
Yeah, there were two applications for the seat that Anita has now, the same seat, which interestingly wasn't for the art or design professional seat, and the city clerk couldn't reslot them because of the way the application was. So the
That's
one
silly.
person in that case, because it was for an at-large, the other, an at-large seat, the other person was not selected. So if they're a design professional,
Right,
they
yeah.
certainly could reapply for the
I just
art.
want to give the person a nudge if they had not applied, but if they did and were not accepted, I'm not, I won't nudge them again for now.
Okay,
That's all.
yeah.
All right. Anything else? Motion to adjourn, somebody?
Motion to adjourn. I stole it from Ron.
That's only his job. Need a second?
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Thanks, everybody.